I'm Alex Bay. I'm the MetaMask Snaps PMM, and part of what we're going to cover today, or at least the very high level overview, is I'll go over some, what I would call the fundamentals of your GTM or go to market, covering some of the basic points, and then I'll get a little bit more into like tactics, and then we'll end with like what is MetaMask Snaps doing? Some people had asked questions about like our PR plan, so I'll answer that. And then some things that that are coming up. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. So our agenda first thing at a GTM that you want to do is you want to set your objectives, understand who your audience is, what's the value prop that you bring, the messaging kind of by persona, how to build a channel plan, some brand guidelines of MetaMask, and then finally some tactics. So we'll go ahead and get right into it. First off, like what are our goals and like why are we doing this, right? For MetaMask, you could say that are the goal of building snaps or why snaps? Well, we want to enable people like they build permissionlessly on Ethereum to eventually build permissionlessly on MetaMask, right? Snaps is the way that we achieve that vision. So our goal is this whole system of permissionless distribution, and the first step there is this Snaps open beta release. How do we measure success? At first it's really about like getting engagement and getting people to find use out of Snaps, right? And then kind of what actions do users take for me to achieve my goals, right? So like I mentioned before, for us, that would just be engagement at a very basic level. So if you can define your goals, like what your goals are, how you measure success, and the actions that users take, you should give yourself like a good foundation to build on. Now, one of my favorite parts is like the audience breakdown. There's a lot of ways to do it. And this is just like primarily just a good exercise. But first you just kind of go over what I would call the fundamentals, like demographics, usually easier to find, psychographics, kind of like interests, what do they think about, technographics, what do they use, obviously various things around Web3, and then kind of their market needs, and then user behavior patterns. And then this is a little bit existential maybe for this presentation, but also considering the regulatory environment. But no matter what you do and no matter how you market, you need to know who your audience is, and these are some good ways to know that. So I highly suggest defining or going through each of these and kind of defining a few notes about them to better understand and know your audience. Sorry, so the next is the value prop, right? So again, here are the like elements, like what are their customer needs? What are the benefits that you offer them? How do you differentiate yourself? Do you have proof? Can you do it simply, like with simplicity and clarity? Oftentimes, this is the product of iteration. Any writing takes time, and you have to put it down and come back to it. So getting to that simplicity and clarity is very important. And then lastly, segmenting your customers. So simply put, focus on the customer, highlight the unique value you provide in a way that resonates with them. As we at market, MetaMask Snaps, and as I build out a lot of MetaMask's strategy, one of the first questions I always ask myself is like, who is the audience? And in this case, for the launch of open beta, the Snaps audience is MetaMask and L1 power users, right? We all know that there are a bunch of features that we want to build, but we're not quite there yet. So who does this actually solve a problem for? Power users. Cool. So this is something that I personally really like. It's just like a very simple tactical way to get where you need to be. But and you do what's called, you make a value matrix to identify messaging. Now, it breaks down, each persona, their problems, and how your product is valuable at solving these problems. Obviously, you can have more than one. And this, to me, is just like the manifestation. I know the previous slide like listed a lot of things, but if you want the action, the thing to do, the thing like that will get you there, I highly recommend using this technique to get there. And I'm happy to share the source on this as well, if you're interested. So on to the next one. So a channel plan. So now that we know who our audience is, we have a value prop, and we've crafted some messaging for one or more personas. we can look at like how we market over the course of Snap's launch and into the future at a very high level. And what does that entail, right? So here's a very not a simplified, but maybe somewhat edited version of something that I look at. First off, if you look up towards the top, we have like, what are the messages that I want to deliver to my audience over time, right? So we have some messages that are here. First off, category messaging. It's kind of like saying, what's the broader, like it's when we talk about the broader vision, right? I mentioned permissionless innovation at the beginning of this conversation, and topics like that, I would put under category messaging. When I introduce that to my audience, that's very high level, right? It doesn't solve like necessarily a pain point. What it does is it does give them like the why behind Snaps, right? So just want to say like there's some opportunity for some high level stuff there. Next to product messaging, product messaging is really around basic functionality, right? So as you all know very well, Snaps, I would say, has like 3 basic areas of functionality. Notifications, basically stay in the know. We have transaction insights, which is just gain a little transparency or understanding of what you're signing before you sign it. And lastly, connectivity. You can connect to a couple non-EVM dApps, right? Then our next message, Snaps Open Beta, what I would call like the deep dive, right? So for anybody who's like wants to go a little bit deeper into it, learn a little bit more, cool. We'll dive. We'll give them the overview of like why we're releasing this now. You know, what maybe like what a roadmap looks like. Something that just goes like way far into it. There are obviously other messages here, but I think you get the point after these 3 examples is that you should have different messages that you want to deliver over time, and that's what we'll get into. So if you look at it on the left here, I have like the channel, right? So we'll have this event and that event. What's the call to action there, right? And where am I sending them? So in this case, you have event 1, maybe permissionless. Our call to action is for power users to learn more or try it now, and we'll direct them to our web page or directory. And then that's some like broader vision category messaging that we spoke about earlier. And as you can tell, these elements play like a crucial role in planning out like, you know, your whole strategy, right? So while all of this stuff is, you know, earlier stages and things we'll be doing at launch, as time goes on, we want to like change the messaging. So kind of as I said before, we have, you know, a couple different channels, blog posts, emails, etc., a couple different calls to action, and changing the messaging over time. So as Snaps launches, you know, we want to start with this big vision. Or sorry, let me say it this way. The final takeaway from this is that we basically have like a big funnel. Category messaging is super broad, super big. And then over time, we get more and more specific, right? So that's pretty much the takeaway. If you guys want a copy of this, I can make a template. I find them to be super helpful because it gives you this wonderful high-level overview of like, here's the message I'm sending at this time. And then also, you know, if you have a marketing team, or even if you don't, it just helps you understand like what's coming up and what you need to be focusing on. So let's go over some brand guidelines and a couple of key details. So we have this, the logo from the repository, kind of when it can be used. And by the way, I'll send a document about this around. The takeaway is that the MetaMask brand and logo, I think as we can all agree, we have the good fortune of having a strong brand and a pretty well-known logo. And as a company, we also have to kind of protect it. So we do have to be pretty strict around where it's used. So we've provided some of those for you. And then some examples about how Uniswap uses it. So we have, they don't show the MetaMask logo anywhere here, unless it's in the kind of connect to wallet area. And then OpenSea uses it. Again, nothing MetaMask here until it's amongst the wallets. So I think as laid out in the key details, kind of it can be used on a button or next to a link to connect MetaMask. I should say this, The logo should not appear anywhere else. Should not appear anywhere else except referring to the wallet in a neutral way, such as try a MetaMask Snap. So I know this is sometimes tough to work with, but part of it is just, like for our own brand sanctity. And also because we've run a brand survey a couple times each year. And one of the results is that one of the primary factors that people or believe in with MetaMask is that we have a high safety score and a very high trust score. And it's very important that we maintain that. So yeah, I'll send these out later. And then some tactics. All right, sweet. So I've gone through, and there will be two parts to this. There's the channel, the description, some strengths and weaknesses and considerations. I won't go through all of this right now. I'll skim over it, if you will. So first, we have community building. Part of me loves this about like the space that we're in. You get a following that's interested not just necessarily in the functionality or the use case that you're solving, but like the why you're solving it and what it's built on. And to me, this is like one of the most long-term plays that you can do. Yes, it may be a little bit like resource and time intensive and may not pay off immediately, but the payoff is high. So I highly recommend that. Social media, I don't think I need to go over that too much. I think everybody understands it well. Email marketing, one of my favorites. I know there may be some, I don't know, hesitancy against it. Aren't we past email? But maybe I'm biased because I used to send a lot of email. But basically, if you can send it or put together like a drip campaign, one email every 3 or 4 days for someone who's like on your email list, reminding them like, hey, this problem that we solved that you may have, here's a solution, or kind of giving them some impetus to download. They work pretty darn well. What's wonderful is that if you have it linked to a sign-up form and someone signs up, it'll automatically send. There's a question in the chat, so I'm going to open that up really quick. Oh, wow. Okay, Andy, I'm going to come back to this because it is, yeah, I'll come back to this question, but thank you. So I'm going to keep going, and maybe we take questions towards the end. Let's go ahead and do that. Thanks. So part two, again, we are under tactics right now. So covering the channels on the left, PR, pretty basic. Usually hire a PR firm, gets coverage in a lot of media outlets. I can tell you now that MetaMask Snaps PR team will be releasing on September 11th. We will start pitching to journalists and at the end of August, and they will have 2 weeks to write, at which point there will be what's called an embargo, where nobody can announce snaps. And it's very important that nobody announce snaps beforehand, because that will ruin it for everybody, and we won't get all the coverage that we may have been able to get together. So yeah, I'll cover this a little bit later, but PR can have a really good effect. I know in terms of geographies, MetaMask Snaps PR will be covering so US, India, Vietnam, and I believe Nigeria, partially because that's where a lot of our power users reside, or where some things come from. So that's what our data is pointing us towards. Okay, cool. 2 more things, and we'll be on to the next part. Content marketing. I'm a huge fan of this because content marketing allows you to be useful and helpful to your audience. It may take some time to put together an infographic, or maybe write something that's really good, like I don't know, blog or I don't know, Twitter, like an excellent Twitter thread. But it really like builds your community, kind of like I talked about in the beginning, and is excellent for like long-term growth. Lastly, there's influencer marketing. It's an option. If you want to do it, go for it. But it comes with some pros and cons. Sometimes there's like a lot of coordination involved with them, and it can be hard to control the message. But anyways, those are just like a couple of the tactics. If you guys have questions, happy to answer them at the end. So some key dates. like I mentioned before, MetaMask Snaps PR plan, August 31st is when our PR team will be pitching to various crypto publications. Story will go under embargo. And I think we all know what that means now, I hope. And then all the stories will go out on September 11th, 2023. The exact time of day is TBD, but I hope that gives you at least an overview. Now, what can you guys do about it? If you're doing a press release, and feel free to do so, aim to release your story 1 to 2 days after MetaMask Snaps releases so that we can get the biggest impact over the course of the week. So you can guess MetaMask will be pitching some larger publications or outlets. And this will give them some, if you guys ask them to release 1 or 2 days later, it'll give them the Snap story for 2 days and then a lot of follow-on content. So that'll kind of keep us all relevant for the week. Messaging is listed below. Now, if we break up the launch into pre-launch, during launch, or lunch, and then post. So I had one question, like, are we allowed to tease our snaps? And I'm a fan of teasing snaps. And I have a link to a decent source, but if you can put together some, like, I don't know, images over the course of a couple of days that eventually combine together for Snaps release, that can be kind of cool. There are a couple of different techniques you can use. I'm happy to share some examples as well. MetaMask, unfortunately, we cannot tease stuff because people always think we're going to drop a token. And yeah, we don't want to do that. So unfortunately, we won't. So I'd say, and also advice for like teasing stuff out. Technically, you can tease everything but the launch date. But I would suggest, like, teasing it out, letting it build a little bit instead of maybe doing everything at once. So did some pre-launch stuff. And by the way, for pre-launch, it's not just like Twitter, right? You can tease things out via email. I haven't seen it done very well in a blog, but if you really want to try, feel free. And then, yeah, basically, you're not limited to social media. There are a couple of ways to tease things. So next, during launch, this is like the first couple days, or what we call like the first week. So you can, host Twitter Spaces, AMAs, community calls, kind of whatever you want to do. Please go for it. And then post-launch, I have to just bring this up now, like in terms of what we can offer. Because Christian only has 24 hours in a day, like the rest of us, we can offer like one call per team. And if that's like, you want to do a podcast, AMA, space, what have you, I made like an intake form. And so we would love to, get a little bit more involved. I know up to this point, I've been drawing like a very hard line about not showing favorability to anyone, but we feel that if we give everyone the chance to have, like, Christian on one call, then we are being fair. So thank you all for bearing with me for that. And then lastly, so this is maybe what I would call bonus. There's this company out there called MVHQ, and they've got a great audience of what I would call crypto power users, or our very high level shared audience. They do these things called missions where people, you set up basically like a quick education thing, and they do a bunch of tasks to learn about maybe your snap or whatever it is you may want to learn about. And then at the end, I don't know, they get a badge or something like that. So they've sent over or shared their deck, and I can share that with you guys all as well, if you'd like to use it. And then, so that's the first thing. It's like a pretty decent way to get your product in front of an audience that can use it. So it's pretty solid. And then, and Snaps will be doing a decent amount with them as well. So this audience will already be primed with what Snaps is. So next, we'll say interview at permissionless. So this isn't guaranteed yet, but I'm pushing really hard to have it. We're thinking about interviewing snap builders at our booth at permissionless. I have an interview sign-up form that I'll send through, much like it's the same one as the one mentioned before. And in fairness, it's like one interview per team, and there's more to come. So with all this said, I will go ahead and start reading the chat, and then we can take it from there. The easy question first, is it possible to access the slides after the Zoom meeting? Absolutely. Happy to share that with you. And then can teasing be done prior to September 11th? So this is a good question. What constitutes teasing? So first off, you do not mention the launch date. That is a hard and fast rule that the PR team is adamant about. I don't want to. Other than that, I'd say it's at your discretion. But if you blow the big moment and the big announcement that Snaps is live, Snaps Open Beta is live for MetaMask users, then maybe you've teased too far. So yeah, I hope I've answered that. And then Andy, your question. Maybe someone in the chat. Okay, so Andy's question, I'll read it aloud. When you connect to a Snap and get an address from it, are you allowed to display the MetaMask logo next to that address to indicate that it came from MetaMask? According to the previous slide, it sounds like not. And then I think you responded to something I said. Let me clarify with Christian. I'm going to say no for don't plan on it for now. And this is part of why I introduced the branding guidelines now, is so that we can get into the nitty-gritty details and use cases. And I can get those to the right people. So I'll go ahead and scroll down again. Li Chin, not a stupid question. Will Snaps be available in official MetaMask from September 11th on? Yes. And then, is there a central repository of Snaps where we should get listed? So there will be, and that's from Sanjeev, and thumbs up by Li Chin. And there is a central repository. I have, maybe it's just the language that gets me, but yeah, so there's a third-party builder who has built a Snaps directory where you should get listed. I can go ahead and add that to my list of things to share with you at the end of this call. I hope that would be okay with everybody. And then lastly, Sanjeev, is there any, rereading? Edo. Another one on teasing. Can we include MetaMask logo and potential video banner? I would prefer not, but it sounds like we have some better guidelines to give you guys than what I just listed. So I think what I'll do during this call, or maybe at the end of this call, is grab all these questions and then give you guys more hard and fast details. Would that be okay? Cool. Great. And then, all right. So that's all from me and everything. I think if you guys, Manish, any questions, concerns?
No, I think you answered most of it, but if there are any, feel free to reach out to me and I can direct them to Alex and get you the answer. And on the directory question, so we're going to have a session from the team also in 2 weeks that will talk about how you can get listed in the Snaps directory.
Andy, I can answer the question is, what is the progress on Snaps MetaMask Mobile? Is this planned? And Andy, what I can say is that it's currently being beta tested. If you want to chat with the team, I can put you in touch, but there is no go live date or anything like that. It's just a project that we have going on the side. And yeah, I can't really make any guarantees around it, but do we want it to happen? Yes. Can I give you a finite date? Unfortunately not. Next question by Li Chin. Thank you for the thumbs up, by the way. It's a great way to notify me that I've answered your question sufficiently. So Li Chin, how do we get bridged with the developers of Snap Directory? Yeah, so I think as Manish mentioned before, the Snap Directory developer will be presenting here, but I will also include a link to the Snap Directory and his form for y'all to fill out. So that will be there. Cool. Akil has asked the comms plan sheet, which was shared, is that tentative comms plans made by MetaMask, which we should keep in mind to maximize outreach, or was that guideline for us? That that sheet I kind of anonymized, but yeah, that's the general comms sheet. Please do not do not share that about like beyond this group. I hope me taking liberty and being honest and forthright with you has earned a little bit of trust. So cool. Yeah, you if you want to plan around that a little bit, feel free. And great. And then so Martin has asked, is there a difference in being on the allow list versus the Snaps repository? No, there isn't. They are technically two separate things, but everybody who is on the allow list or who has been allow listed, I then send you over to Piotr, and he will add you to the directory. So that should help. That said, Piotr will likely need a little bit more information. So if you do fill out, he has a form on the Snap directory. If you do fill that out, just expect him to request a little bit more info. And then Christian, thank you for answering that. Thank you, Akil, and everybody for saying that mum's the word on the messaging dates. Really appreciate that. Sanjeev, any guidance on how we communicate and educate users, devs, on the fact that there can be multiple snaps for a chain/ecosystem? So for example, wallet adapter builders we've been talking to are a little confused. This is a pretty specific question and maybe good for another time. Yeah, I don't know, Sanjeev, if you have Manish's contact info, I'd say go ahead and reach out to him. Oh yeah, thank you, Christian. Christian, if you want to hop on and answer questions as well, totally open to that too. I don't need to be the only one, but it has been a pleasure with you all. So thank you.
You were doing a great job, so I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, let me just run back through a few questions. The question from Mind about the Keyring API, please reach out to Manish and he'll forward you to our accounts team. There's a separate plan for that, and that's coming after the launch, but thanks for asking about that. And then with regards to communicating about the fact that there can be multiple snaps for a single chain, I think that's really important. I think that the best advice that I can give, I mean, obviously this is something completely new and we're going to be navigating this together. The best advice that I can give is to treat it similarly to how we communicate that there are multiple wallets for a single chain. The same way that dApps sort of like handle, talking about the difference between, MetaMask and Coinbase wallet and Trust wallet and so forth, right? And so a couple things I'll say to this, right? Let's say there's two different snaps that support Bitcoin. One thing that is important for users to understand is that those two Bitcoin snaps can potentially be using the same derivation path. And so users should try to, users should only install one snap per chain, right? So they should only install one Bitcoin snap, and they should, think about whether or not they have a reason to install both. Obviously, all of the snaps are audited and reviewed by us. So I don't think there's really any concern about installing multiple snaps, but there can be, I think the other part of your question is if a dApp is using one of those snaps, right? So if a dApp is wanting to use a Bitcoin snap, it should be clear about which snap it's using, right? And potentially detect whether the user has the right snap installed. So let's say there's a Bitcoin wallet and there's a Bitcoin manager. They're two completely different snaps. The dApp should actually check which of those snaps is installed and should message to users and be transparent about which snap it wants to use. I don't know if that answers your question, Sanjeev. And then with respect to using the MetaMask logo, MetaMask doesn't have very much in terms of guidelines for dApp developers, but we've tried to look at what dApp developers are doing today to give you all some guidance with respect to snaps. And so, what you'll often see when you look at Uniswap or OpenSea or snapshot.org or any of the other major dApps out there that use MetaMask as one of the connection options is that, they don't use the MetaMask name or branding pretty much anywhere in their dApp, right? They don't use anything that would imply that it's an official MetaMask product or it's a dApp that's endorsed by MetaMask or anything like that. But they do use the MetaMask logo and name when the user is actually connecting to MetaMask and to represent an account that's linked to MetaMask, right? So if you're showing a connect button that is specific to MetaMask, you can show the MetaMask logo there. And if you are showing an address that is linked to MetaMask, where the user is actually connected to MetaMask and that's where that address is coming from, then you can show the MetaMask logo there as well. And the MetaMask logo in these instances is meant to be the same size as the text that it is showing up next to, right? Whether it's part of the button or next to an address or next to a link that says connect to MetaMask or something like that. And so, we will publish some examples of this soon because we're actually working on a better example of how dApps should detect snaps that will work with MetaMask Stable. I know a lot of Snaps developers are currently detecting Flask in their dApps, and that's not going to work for Stable. So you're actually going to need to detect a Snaps related feature, and so I'm going to have examples of that by the end of this week. But then you'll actually be able to update your dApps to be ready for Stable. And then let me see a couple things. Okay, the question from Akil about whether we're going to have planned front-end customizability in the UX for snaps. Yes, we do plan to have updates that will vastly improve what you can do with the UX and even do dynamic UX. Will that require subsequent versions to get audits? We are not going to ask anyone who has already gotten an audit for the Stable launch to get another audit. What we're going to ask is that when you have a major change to your snap, please share that new version with us and we'll review it internally. And I think the core changes shouldn't be such a large delta that it would require another audit, and we should be able to review it internally. Okay, and the question from Andy about get BIP32 entropy. So the get entropy is pretty complicated. If and some of you should all be aware that get BIP32 entropy does not work with CoinType 60. We're actually blocking CoinType 60 and Stable, so you can't use it to generate Ethereum keys for CoinType 60. But it works for all the other derivation paths. The issue with CoinType 60 is that you're only deriving from the secret recovery phrase, and you're not deriving, if a user has an imported private key or is using a hardware wallet like Ledger, Trezor, Keystone, etc., then you won't be able to get that key at all. You also can't detect which account the user is actually using. Okay, so it doesn't actually do what people expect it to do, which is to get the currently selected Ethereum account. Because of this, we've actually enabled ETH request accounts in Stable. And so you should have access to this method now and reach out to us if you need help using it. But you can actually do ETH request accounts from your Snap, and you'll get a flow that is similar to how a dApp connects to an Ethereum account. And then you'll get that public key, and you'll be able to use personal sign. Now, for other use cases, right, for other chains, right, if you want to do, Bitcoin, Solana, Cosmos, etc., getting, using BIP32 or BIP44. The current API that we offer enables you to generate key pairs with the SRP. And this is pretty much, enabling you to use what MetaMask currently offers, which is an SRP-based wallet for other chains. As you mentioned, Andy, this doesn't work at all with like a hardware wallet that supports Bitcoin or Solana, right? So if a user has a hardware wallet that supports Bitcoin or Solana, they can't use that with a Snap. Unfortunately, as of right now, we don't have a hardware wallet API for Snaps. Enabling USB support in Snaps context is very difficult. And so we don't have that yet. So if you're planning to do something with hardware wallets, I don't have an answer for you yet. There isn't really a way to do that. As for imported private keys, your Snap could use imported private keys, and that's up to you. You could do a dialog prompt. It has an input field. You can tell the user, import your private key here. You obviously explain to them how you plan to use it, that you are not sending it to a server or anything like that, but it's securely stored within the Snap, and you could support imported private keys and support those types of accounts within your Snap. That level of account management is up to you. How you differentiate SRP derived accounts versus imported private keys, that's up to you to manage within your Snap. So I think, the simplest case is to just use SRP derived accounts. If you want to support other things, you could. But the short of this answer is that get entropy is for deriving key pairs from the SRP, and it doesn't support anything beyond that. And anything beyond that will be up to you. We're happy to help with ideas that you may have on how to do that. Hardware wallets is going to be very difficult. Imported private keys you could obviously do, with your own custom implementation. Any other questions? Lishan, you probably know the answer to that more than I do, whether a QR hardware wallet is doable. There's no way to show QR codes, and there's no way to connect to the camera from a Snap. I think, you would be back to the point of doing a DApp to do sort of like the wallet interface, which is not really the point of Snaps. So I don't think that that's a very long-term solution. When we do, we are going to do a UX update within the next quarter. So by end of Q4, it will be possible to do SVG and to do dynamic interfaces. And at that point, you may be able to generate a QR code. But even then, I don't think you will be able to connect to the camera from a Snap. So that's going to be a challenge. I don't want to get too far into the technical questions. I just want to make sure to wrap up, some of the questions about how to tease Snaps and so forth. I think it's fine to say that you are working on a MetaMask Snap, that this MetaMask Snap will enable XYZ in MetaMask. I just would caution against using the MetaMask logo within your marketing materials, because users see that and they think, oh, this is like a MetaMask partnership or endorsed by MetaMask, and that's not the case, right? So I think that, any sort of like branding that you use should be your own branding, similar to how if you look at anything that comes from Uniswap, OpenSea, etc., all of their teaser materials use their own branding. And it's very clear that's coming from them, and it's not something that's coming from MetaMask. Any other questions? We'll get back to the question about online interview. We'd have to talk to our booth team. And
if
please
there
do.
are no, sorry,
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying if there are no more questions for you, I have a question for Alex.
Yeah, go for it.
So Alex, there was a question in the chat that how the directory itself will be discoverable. Are we planning to do anything from our side to send users to the directory?
Yeah, so great question, and I must have skipped over that, so thanks for bringing it up again. So the MetaMask Snaps landing page on MetaMask.io/snaps will link to the third-party directory. And to give you an idea of our launch campaign, during the first couple weeks, we'll be doing owned and earned media. So things like blog posts, tweets, maybe a couple AMAs, things like that. And then assuming that the product, goes well, everything is stable, nobody's rugging, nothing bad is happening, then we'll start to direct some paid media towards the third-party directory. That said, in order to maybe unify the feeling of security around MetaMask, it is likely that MetaMask will also have a version of the portfolio, of the directory somewhere on it. I don't have a launch date for that yet, but given our goal of permissionless distribution, we thought it important for the third party to own the directory. So yes, in short, we will link to them. We do have long-term plans to drive some paid ads and paid media there. And then maybe even with no exact date in mind, the part of the directory will appear on the MetaMask website. Thanks.
Yeah, one last thing I'll say related to events. Please do let us know if you will be at Permissionless or DAppCon or ETH Global New York in the month of September. Yeah, discoverability of the Snaps directory in the wallet itself. That's something that we're considering. We don't have an answer on that yet. And one thing I'll say about this, I totally understand the concern. With respect to dApps, right? We don't recommend dApps from within the MetaMask wallet. Users find dApps by browsing. Users find Snaps by browsing, and they find dApps by browsing. And so, successful dApps have grown simply by being, websites that users can discover. The idea of MetaMask is it's a companion that is available to users as they browse the internet and encounter these dApps and connect to them. So we expect that the primary discovery mechanism for users is going to be through the web and through your own marketing and promotion. And, we will recommend users to visit the Snap directory as a way to find snaps. And we expect that to be a primary discovery mechanism as well. But we don't think that it's necessary to recommend the Snaps directory directly from the wallet, because it's not really relevant to how users use the wallet itself, right? They use the wallet when they're connecting to a dApp, when they're managing their funds and so forth. But again, to that question, that's something that we're still exploring. We don't have an answer on it currently. And yes, I would say we are excited. I don't think it feels like excitement at the moment, but yes.